This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
To She Wasn't Born Yesterday for women who are 40 plus fabulous by the Empty Nest Chicks. I'm Janet Evans, ex-M&T Saatchi advertising creative who have won numerous radio and TV awards. Not that that'll affect us because we're doing a podcast.
And I'm Dr. Amelia Haines, who has been a medical doctor for 30 years and specialising in sexual health and mental health and relationships, and I'm generally a very useful human being.
Well, we'll find out about that, but we are here to work together.
People tell me on good authority that I am.
Really? Yes, well, they never say that to me, so I think we're the perfect hosts for She Wasn't Born Yesterday. Well, g'day, Dr. Amelia. We're back on She Wasn't Born Yesterday, our podcast. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us today because we're going to talk about a fascinating topic. Have you ever watched porn, Dr. Amelia?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I have watched actually enormous amounts of porn.
In your professional capacity,
And I was going to say, the reason I have is totally professional, but I have watched a lot with beautiful Dr. Patricia Werricoon, actually, as part of my master's in sexual health. So, yeah.
Why? How does it contribute to a master's in sexual health if you watch pornography?
Well, no. So we watched a complete smorgasbord, really, so that we knew what people were watching.
Yes. Okay, research. I like it.
Yeah. I watched in a room with a lot of other people.
Oh, that would have been awkward.
Yeah.
Was it awkward?
Actually, it was fine.
No, okay, right. You're a doctor. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Well, I have watched porn, but only by kind of mistake. Because what happened is I went to this avant...
That's such a line.
Yeah, no, because I went to this avant-garde sort of theatre production.
Yes.
And, contemporary and all that sort of thing. And in the background, there was this screen that was just playing porn sort of non-stop in a loop, the whole kind of performance. I have to say, it was really boring.
I think you might be speaking for the average woman, actually.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know because, that's my exposure to porn. But I thought we might talk to a sexpert today about why that maybe is and whether that's a bad thing.
Yes.
Today we have the fabulous Dr. Marshall Ballantine-Jones joining us in the studio.
We're lucky.
Marshall, hi.
Welcome, Marshall.
We've hollered for a Marshall and we got one.
Hi, ladies. Thanks for having me on your show.
Hey, Marshall. So what makes you our sexpert on pornography?
I've been researching pornography for about the last 8 years. I've been researching it from an epidemiological perspective. That is, I've been looking at stats and studies, particularly regarding adolescents and the effects that exposure to pornography has on them and their formation, as well as on effective ways for reducing the negative impacts of those effects and helping adolescents and young adults navigate a hypersexualized world.
Wow, that's incredible. And you did a PhD on that topic as well, is that right?
Yep. So I did a PhD at Sydney University in their medical school. Actually, you mentioned Patricia Werricoon before. She was one of my secondary supervisors in my study.
Yeah.
And we did look at teenagers and a complex study of the impact of their exposure, but we really wanted to examine what were some of the mediating effects for reducing the impacts of those exposures.
Yeah.
So we looked at parents and peers and education and compulsivity and addiction, and we looked at attitudes and various well-being factors, and it was really quite a complex study, but it gave us a great picture of what's going on in the world and what we might want to do if we wanted to address some of the undesirable impacts from pornography.
Yes. So, I think we've all heard a lot about some of the undesirable effects, but what primarily are the undesirable effects of pornography?
We could categorize the effects in different proximities. We could look at it from the perspective of the user, and there's a lot of negative effects on the user, starting at their biology and their sexological systems and their neurology. We know that when you invoke the sexual system, when you are aroused, when you go through the process of sexual engagement to the destiny of orgasm, your brain invokes a massive cocktail of hormones. Many people have heard of dopamine. Dopamine is the reward and happiness hormone in our brain, a neurotransmitter that we use for all sorts of things, but is produced in massive quantities when we do exciting things like being sexual. Mm-hmm. But not only dopamine. Dopamine is a central explainer of some of these negative effects, because what happens when we do high dopamine producing activities in repetition, our brain will fast track new neural pathways, new brain scripts to help us repeat those enjoyable experiences quicker.
Okay.
To access them faster in terms of memory recollection. And so we find that when people start engaging regularly in porn, that they start getting one-tracked minded with it, that their brains will start to develop new neural pathways, and they will actually, in the process, will start to neglect other fun, exciting, dopamine-generating activities which may have been in their past.
Like eating and
eating
playing.
is good.
Eating, sport.
They've done lots of rat studies, haven't they, where the rat becomes very kind of one-track mind and kind of forgets to feed itself.
Oh.
And things like
Because
that.
it's
Anyway,
having too much fun with pornography.
well, just with one thing. Dopamine,
Right.
dopamine.
But so you can actually kind of overdose on dopamine in a particular area, and you just want to do that thing because you know that that's going to deliver.
Going to give you the reward. Yeah.
And whereas you
the
don't.
dopamine.
Right.
Well, absolutely. You can get saturated to the extent that your dopamine receptors will start to reduce and won't soak in, so to speak, the amount of dopamine that you may have previously had. And what that means is that you essentially stop getting the buzz that you used to get. And so that triggers new behaviors in you, because basically if you want the same buzz, you're going to have to increase the behaviors, or increase, in the case of something like pornography or other sort of sensation-seeking activities, you have to increase the volume of those activities just to get the same high that you used to have. As you go along, you get less and less satisfaction, but you also get triggered easier because, as I said before, you get these new neural pathways. There's a lot behind that. We know that there are little neuroproteins called delta FOSB which help fast track those neural pathways. And over time, you get triggered faster, or you get sensitized faster to repeat that behavior. In the case of someone who's into porn, they'll get triggers much quicker and more frequently to go and look at porn. It won't give the satisfaction that it used to give. So what they would do is, typically the porn user would then start looking at more extreme, more confronting, more titillating, more earthy content that will help generate those feelings. And you get this, what we call the addiction spiral, where you get more craving but less satisfaction.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that
Sounds dire.
It sounds dull. Yeah,
Yeah,
like who
yeah.
wants that? What are the triggers that would make you want to view porn? Like you talk about the triggers.
Taking a step back, we're all sexual beings. And once a person hits puberty, they have this inner mechanism that fires up desire. In the case of males, generally speaking, they have 5 to even 15 times as much testosterone as females. And so a visual trigger, like something presented in pornography, can invoke a reaction of desire very quickly at micro speeds in the viewer. So guys can be triggered by sight. Guys can be triggered by content that they come across. And in the case of someone who has been regularly looking at pornography over and over again and knows what brings them pleasure and knows where to go, other triggers associated with those behaviors will amplify repeated triggers. For example, if you look at porn on your phone, and 80 to 90% of people now look at pornography on their phone, well, having a phone nearby can be a trigger.
Yeah, right.
If it's at certain places or certain times, like in your bedroom or at your desk or
On the bus.
on the bus, some people do. Most people will be looking at porn for the purpose of gratification. And so people who look at porn publicly won't be masturbating to that porn on the bus, or so to speak.
It's rarer.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Not without the police getting involved.
Yeah,
and so forth.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there'll be triggers. I mean, of course, you could be on the bus and you can see something that reminds you of the pornography that you've loved, like a picture of someone beautiful, something that's sexualized in advertising. And that can be a trigger as well. And that can then set off desire and craving, which can carry through for the rest of the day until you get to have a private session, so to speak. So, yeah, there are all sorts of triggers. But some of the triggers get amplified based on how frequently you've been looking at porn in the past and when you started looking as well, because the earlier you started and the more frequently you look, the more likely that they're going to be go-to points in your brains for the outcome of pornography, which is the soothing effect of the orgasm. Because your body actually produces at the orgasm level a massive volume of endorphins and enkephalins, which are natural opioids. So you feel really good. Not only the sensation of an orgasm is powerful, but the after effect can also be very powerful. A couple of other things I should say is one of the other important hormones that relates to our sexuality is oxytocin and also vasopressin. And these are often called the bonding hormones. And if you invoke your sexual systems, you produce large volumes of those. And they can bond you to the object or the target of your desires. And so people can actually bond to the process of using pornography on their phone, or certain types of pornography, or certain performers, certain niches. And it could be as powerful as if you had a married spouse who you had grown very close to through your relationship as well. Yeah, that can then just have a feedback loop of generating triggers further down the track, particularly when you have those displacing experiences like stress or boredom or whatever that makes you want to go to something for comfort. Your brain will want to go to the thing that you use most, which in the case of someone who started young and uses it a lot, the porn user.
Yeah.
You know what we'd love you to chat about? Because our podcast is for women who are 40 plus fabulous, mothers as well as wives. And statistics now demonstrate the women are actually accessing porn more. Have a chat to us about women accessing porn. Is it different to the way, like, is our experience of it different? And if so, how?
There is increasing amount of evidence to show that the gap between the frequency of females and males who view pornography is narrowing. Rough as guts, if you looked across the world, it seems to be about 3/4 of men will regularly look at porn and about 1/4 of women. And even for those women who look at porn, it won't be the sort of porn, generally speaking, that guys will look at. It's a smaller, but they won't look at porn as much. But there's not a lot of studies. This is the thing. There's not a lot of studies that have focused on women, why they look at porn, what are the predictors for them looking at porn, and so forth. But we do know that when it comes to the type of porn that females engage with, it's not always visual. Probably worthwhile saying that pornography is a slippery target to define, right? It's made up of two Greek words, porneia and graphe, which means sexual immoral writings. But actually, it was a phrase coined by the French about 150 years ago, and really is just a loose term for meaning any media that arouses.
50 Shades of Grey, that sort of stuff.
Well, exactly. Well, this is where it's relevant to women, is that things like literature, things that involve narrative, story, things which invoke romance and intimacy become far more attractive to females, whereas males, generally speaking, are triggered by sight. I remember Patricia Wirikoon who explaining it this way to a group. She says, the male system's like a nuclear control room with a big red button. And the female sexual system's like a NASA control room with 4,000 dials and levers. And
that's excellent.
And, I'm a male, right? So I am sort of swinging blind here so far as that there's limited research that explains the different mechanisms for females' engagement with pornography. And I'm also a male, so I don't have that subjective experience. But that said, most therapists that I speak with and sexologists that I speak with report the same thing. Firstly, what women will find arousing is more complex. Secondly, the women who statistically find themselves regularly engaging with a form of pornography, be it at a compulsive level or a problematic level, tend to have a complex backstory that's a little less linear than a male. The typical story for most males is that they came across porn when they were 11 or 12.
Yeah. Yep.
They liked it and they use it.
And all their friends are watching.
Yep, it's normalized,
Yep.
it's typical. But just when they study the background of frequent female porn users, it seems that they often have complex stories like maybe trauma in their background. They might have had some early sexual exposure in their background, be it through relationships, through abuse, through something like that's amplified an interest.
Really? Because if you've been abused, surely you'd be the complete opposite to wanting to watch anything like that.
I think what Marshall says, though, is very much in the literature and what, like I see as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's like an early awakening. Like, even if it's negative.
Right.
It's true for boys too. Like, early negative awakening still awakens it and kind of lays down a memory within the brain.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And there's also questions about identity, security, and packaged in that complex insecurities, which are particularly promoted through pornography, which have this interaction with females' thinking and sexuality, which makes it just more complex and certainly more difficult to discuss and to engage with those particular women with, because there's a lot less of them in a cohort of females, particularly, say, if we're in a Christian context, in a church context, you're probably talking no more than 2 out of 10 females will be having some sort of regular exposure to pornography. They report, I hear this everywhere, they find it very isolating. There's a lot of shame involved. Shame amongst their female peers, which is hard for them to explain, but it may have to do with just a sense of sexual incompleteness, which needs to get amplified by this behaviour. But at any rate, it makes it difficult for them to come forward and get help or to discuss with others. And they can walk and be crippled in solitude and isolation for many years, unless people open a door to them that's safe and that's confidential and can invite them into having dialogue and starting to work through their thinking and their behaviours and why they are at where they're at, whatever that is.
Because Dr. Amelia, you were telling me before that you're seeing more people in your practice, more women with pornography issues than you ever have before. Is that right?
Well, that is true. But Marshall, also I was saying to Janet that, because she wanted to know more, of course, because she's Janet. And I said, well, actually, to be totally frank, it's not the presenting issue that women would come and see me for. Because, Marshall, I don't know if you know, but I work in the sexual and relationship space almost exclusively. So these women don't present with the porn issue. It comes up just as an aside, and usually they're presenting to me for all sorts of other complicated mental health and relationship and so on issues, and it's very much an aside that, you know, occasionally does get some airtime in the sessions, but often, because of the other complexities and things, doesn't. So.
But it's weird that it strikes me, and you were saying, Marshall, that women get off more on the literature, the nuanced kind of pornography, but because pornography seems to objectify women, and therefore, you know, I did wonder, one of my questions was like, why would women therefore watch
Damaged women, which is a lot of us like to be objectified.
Wow. Yeah, right. Okay. Because personally, I don't like to be objectified, but, you know, there you go.
How gorgeous that you're not damaged.
Well, I probably am, but, you know, I mean, I love ice cream, but, you know, that's food porn, I guess, right?
Yeah.
You've got to take a step back at this point and look at the world we live in and the base messages that it sends to people about who they are and where their value is. And so when we talk about objectification, you know, we're talking about reducing people to their physical attributes and basing a value and importance on that. And essentially that's sexuality and having sexual appeal or sexual function. Mainstream media across the board is more and more sexualized now and just permeates and perpetuates these narratives. More and more people, not just women, but boys as well, men as well, are increasingly fed the narrative that their significance and their success is bound in their physical appeal and attractiveness. So, it's just at the starting point, there's just a complex narrative there which is fed all the time. And if you're on social media does have a high correlation to objectification and being sexualized, particularly for women. But if you're on social media, you are, as a female, you're bombarded with standards, role models, depictions, personality celebrities who are attractive. And
who've got filters on.
Oh, yes, they must have.
So, as a girl grows up through teenage years, whether or not she's seen actual pornography, she is sensitive to and probably increasingly fragile to the perception that her value is in her appearance. So when you ask, well, what appearance should I be? And if the answer is, well, what other people desire, well, that will often lead you to looking at porn to see what the standard is, to see what the boys are looking at, to understand what I'm meant to be.
I know, because porn is still seen as being the reality, right? That's the real thing, not a fantasy, but the reality.
Yeah.
So one of the other things about porn, is the fact that people do think, I don't want to bring it up because if they aren't thinking about it or they're not exposed, I don't want to, bring it into the room. But the truth of the matter is, I think it's very important that everyone realises is the elephant is well and truly in the room.
Absolutely.
Like, it is well and truly in the room.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so sorry for everyone. I'm so, so sorry. But we need to address it. We need to
Just talk about it.
Yeah, we do. We do. We need to, just in whatever way that it doesn't mean if you're not very chatty, you don't need to suddenly become a bizarre chatter about porn, but you do need to be comfortable with talking about those things.
It's so
it's there.
out there. It's so
there.
pervasive through all of society, isn't it? I mean,
Poor men. Like, it's good to have you here, Marshall, because poor blokes, like all the blokes that I see who I really like actually are in turmoil about all of this. And I'm talking about men who have no ethical reason not to use porn, but they're not 100% comfortable with it at all. And they feel like they're wasting time, which indeed they are. And, there are just so many negative effects. They're not able to ejaculate inside their wives to have babies. That's another thing that happens that I see quite a lot of.
because they're so used to having porn and it's themselves, having sex with themselves.
Yeah. So all of these horrible side effects, poor men actually, it's quite a kind of heavy burden. They're so drawn to it and yet it's having such a negative impact on them.
Yeah, addictive, I think, is what you were talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just can't stop, perhaps.
It just takes 10 hours to get what used to take half an hour.
Dr. Amelia, you talk about the tragedy of these guys who are lamenting the problem of porn in their life, as I know that females do as well. Most people, certainly in the Christian community, but also plenty of people out there in the secular community,
Totally.
feel bad about it. They feel bad about it personally because they see that it's having an impact on themselves and it's having an impact on their relationships and on their sexuality. But everyone is becoming increasingly concerned with the effect that this hypersexualized society is having on our young people, particularly our young girls. We know that there's more violence promoted in sexuality these days, particularly in pornography. We see a lot more abusive relationships. We see the stats are saying that there's more reporting of sexual-related abuse and crimes in both relationships and in society and in schools. So the whole backdrop of using porn is murky and ugly. But Christians have a different view as well. We know that God created every person in his image and we have intrinsic value. And we also know that sexuality is a good gift that he gave us. It's a powerful gift. It comes with a buyer beware tag to it.
Yeah.
He knows the domain that it works best in. He knows that it works in a committed, single, monogamous relationship we call marriage. And he knows that to engage in self-seeking, selfish, exploitative behaviours of others that is promoted in our sexualized world and porn against one another in our communities, that is harmful and abusive. It creates chaos. And so, we have even more reasons than people in the secular world for wanting to rid ourselves of porn. But at any rate, there's so much impetus now to get action going because most people recognise that this is something that is just only harmful and really has no up end to it.
Yeah. It's actually really good that lately I've been seeing quite regularly there'll be articles in the Herald or something like that talking about from a young girl's perspective, like what's expected of her at a ridiculously young age, 13 or something like that, from young boys who, because of their porn habits, think that sex has to be performed in a certain way with choking and all of that sort of stuff. And they say, these young girls say, they are coerced into thinking that, well, if they don't do that, then they're rejected
odd.
by, yes,
Well, they're
rejected
odd.
by these young guys and their circles. This is horrifying, and I'm really glad that more and more of these articles are coming up about these horrifying effects, because I probably have not been up to speed with what's happening with like 13-year-old kids at the moment, and it's great that it's getting some PR. But Marsha, you're the CEO of an organisation called DigiHelp.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there?
Yeah, so DigiHelp is my company that creates school curriculum programs that address sexualization in an online world. And I also, with that, speak at schools and consult with governance and executive and policy makers for schools to help them think through strategic solutions to address the sexualization that's happening amongst their children and their students. And what you just reported in terms of those anecdotes for young girls experiencing these, frankly, sexually abusive encounters with young teenage boys is so frequent. And add to that just hypersexualized behaviour amongst school students. So age of first-time sexual engagement with students is getting lower and more frequent. Roughly about 35% of year 10 kids are sexually active, and that jumps up to maybe 70-80% by year 12. If you go back 10 years and look at the studies then, those numbers were lesser. There is more sexual behaviours going on. With it, a lot of harm, because from the girl's perspective, any girls whose sexual encounters are basically pseudo porn scripts, that's going to be psychologically damaging for them. That's a horrible first way to be exposed to sex. You know, there's no intimacy. These kids don't have the emotional capacity to understand relationships as adults would. Not that many adults seem to get that these days anyway. But in terms of commitment, in terms of compassion and empathy and respect, reciprocity, and all those very important values when it comes to a holistic relationship. But the boys are also getting ripped off because they're being told this narrative. I mean, they have no point of reference in terms of real relationships to know whether the sex that they've been watching is real and effective or not. And so that's what they believe it is. And so they launch off trying to imitate that. They find very quickly that it doesn't work, that porn sex doesn't work in real life. That's why so many emerging adult men and men in their 20s and 30s are experiencing erectile dysfunction in real relationships, though not so much when they're using porn, because their sex scripting has been changed and morphed to work with porn and not with a real person. We're getting this army, a generation of men, as Amelia was saying before, who are waking up to how ripped off they are. And, of course, as people have more dysfunctional relationships, a lot more breakdown, a lot more mental health problems around it, we're finding people's relationships are impoverished, more short-term, people are lonelier, and it's just a mess. And so what I say to the schools when I go work with these students and also their teachers is I remind them that their kids are surrounded by a 24/7 education on sexuality, and that's the world. And what they do at their schools is just going to be a small counter push that will only have traction if they can invoke their parents in on the work, and if they can get the kids working together collectively with a degree of agency and independence to critique and to problem solve how to navigate this hypersexualized culture. If we can enable those kids to critique, address and affirm a better narrative for themselves while warning about the problems of pornography and sexualized social media, and pitching that vision of good, holistic, intimate, mutually respectful sort of relationship, then kids have a bit of hope that could prevent them from developing some of the poor outcomes that we see promoted from our sexualized society.
Yeah, it's funny because you get both sides of the story in such a big way these days, don't you? The whole white ribbon thing and respecting women is on one end of the curve, and then there's pornography telling a completely different story.
I think it's really significant and a very important point. We do acknowledge, like Marshall did before, a large proportion of society actually isn't on board. We don't need to just think about Christians here. We're talking about the whole of society. Men and women are understanding that this has had really bad repercussions for everyone. So I think that's, really important that we realise it's not just Christians who are kind of fighting against a kind of endless flood.
No.
That it is actually only a particular sector of society that are just thinking, oh, this is fine, and there are no negative kind of outcomes. There are heaps of single people out there who just would go, I think there are really negative things that are going on here.
Yeah. They've come to that own realisation.
Oh, totally.
Right.
And we're talking men who are kind of very driven to go naked female, like that is really, or naked male if they're homosexual, that is really, interesting to me. But still going, nah, I think that my life is actually more than this.
Yeah. Well, you'd hope so.
Well, you speak as a woman, though.
Well, that's true, yes. Well, you're right, yes. I can't help it. I just... Marshall, this seems like a really bleak scenario that, we're all painting you, but do you think as a result of having this generational kind of gap where online porn has absolutely climaxed over the last 30 years, is it going to sort of reverse itself and people going to, as Dr. Amelia says, think, you know what, I think porn companies are making a lot of money at my expense and it's not good for me, therefore I'm going to say no? Or do you think it's going to take something else?
First and foremost, people are sexual beings and people like sexual pleasure. If someone's offering that for free on tap when you want it and the world around you is messy and complex.
Condoning it.
Yeah, and condoning it. It's being supported around the world, but also you've got reasons to want to use porn as a soothing, medicating way or so forth. What's going to stop you? And I think the only way that we're going to get genuine community-wide systemic pushback on pornography is if the hearts and minds of people are convinced that this is not good. And right now, I think there's genuine ambivalence. I think one of the confusing factors has been the argument that pornography is empowering to women for expressing their sexuality. I think that doesn't stand up under the scrutiny of the research when you look at 99.999% of females who participate in the production of porn come from horribly exploited and abusive backgrounds and are desperate and aren't there because they're empowered.
Yeah.
But while the narrative is pushed that sexual autonomy and expression is empowering and that your personal happiness trumps societal good, then you're not going to get people interested in looking under the hood and actually seeing what's going on with this porn epidemic. But that said, I find whenever I speak to a cohort of kids or young adults, I'm always astonished with the positive feedback I get from kids, particularly boys, those who have been chronic porn users. They realise as you put it before them why this stuff's not good for them and why it's not good for the people around them and why it's not good for the world that they live in. They're convinced. And when they're convinced, they want to make a difference. Many of them face a struggle at that point because high pornography use is addictive and very difficult to break. And I know a lot of people who struggle with breaking the porn cycle even though they really want to. That's a different question than just having a desire not to look at it. But I find that it's easier to convince people that this is not good for them. And I'm impressed with the efforts that people put into place after they hear the data and look at those reasons. So maybe if we get more voices out there, maybe if we get more conversation going, and maybe if we keep the pressure on public policymakers to not conceal the truth and to push back on the momentum from the porn industry, which is constantly trying to negate those arguments, then we may find a diminishing acceptance and we may find families and parents being more engaged with their children about the negatives of all this, and that may make it, well, that will make a difference as well. It does make a difference when parents engage that way.
Well, I think the solution really is to clone Marshall. I think we just need more Marshalls.
More Marshall.
You know, extra Marshalls everywhere.
Well, it's very nice to have male chatting about this because it's easy to kind of jump on this particular bandwagon as a female, which is not helpful in its own way. But yes, more marshals.
More marshals. That's our take-home message.
I think that would be the biggest single turn-off for a sexualized industry. My wife will tell you that there's already one too many of me most of the time. So.
Oh, no, that's too mean.
Don't believe you.
No. She's allowed to feel dissatisfied at times, because that's only to err is human.
But we won't talk about your sex life now.
No, she's earned her criticism, I can assure you. She's a very special woman.
We do not feel that we have to deny that that's probably true, since we're sure that you are a sinful human being.
Oh, man.
I would want to say, as we finish, that maybe there are people in your audience who are listening to this, and for them personally, porn use is a real struggle, and they want to know what to do next. We didn't really touch on that, but for anyone who really is struggling with personal problematic porn use, I would encourage you to do these things. I'd encourage you to talk to someone trusted about it. And if you're in a community like a church community, find a trusted person, a mentor or someone who you can just share that with. I can promise you, even though that might feel embarrassing, that those people care about you and they will walk beside you. Secondly, I'd probably encourage you at least once in your struggle to spend some time with a therapist and help them open you up and understand yourself better, because there might be reasons for why your behaviours are as they are, and it'd be very, very helpful for you to have that clarity. And thirdly, for anyone who's struggling to knock the pattern and cycle of what feels like an addiction, remember that there's something going on with your brain that's developed over time where your brain wants to default to using porn. And the great news is that your brain is plastic. It can change. And the best way to change your brain when you find yourself in those loops is to open it up to new dopamine-generating activities, ones which can create new neural pathways and new interests. And so I always encourage people to invest in new hobbies and passions and activities, things that aren't related to screens, things that get you away from the forum that you're normally triggered by. And those steps can really help you overcome those struggles and make some genuine progress for change.
Marshall, it has been such a revelation talking to you, and so interesting and so important and topical.
Yeah.
The whole porn thing. We really, really appreciate your time talking to us about this. Thank you so much, Marshall.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
We love chatting, and we really look forward to all of our special guests and to just chatting with you guys. And we'd actually love to hear from you. We'd love you to send us flowers. I'm a dark chocolate person. What about you? You're protein bar for Dr.
I
Amelia.
am. I'm so healthy. It's disgusting.
But, we'd love to know if there's burning issues for you. Contact us on hopepodcast.com.au if there's issues that you'd like us to talk about, or you really want explored, or you think you'd be an expert on. Hit us up and come on the podcast. Come on our journey with us. We look forward to your company.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.